This is always a controversial thing. Since we discovered that the Oscars are just a pathetic little mommy clutch of people complaining inside Hollywood and it's our little event and stuff, do you cover it or not, right? Do you talk about it or not? Well, let's get the facts out of the way first. The biggest media event in the country over the weekend was the Oscars last night. That is just fact. Don't yell at me. It just was a fact. I don't write the rules. I just pay attention to this stuff so you don't have to tell you what's going on. And I filter out the crap to get to the truth, all right? Now, that said, I promise I won't dwell on the Oscars. And I think there's a good takeaway here. A lot of people are upset about it now. It's all okay. Every time a Hollywood show happens, everybody complains about it. It's getting worse. They don't like it. That's where all the commies are, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I get that. And that's all true. I'm not arguing with you. But you got to look at it this way. It's good news because it's getting more and more pathetic every single year they have these things. They have nothing left. I'm not going to tell you I watched this whole thing. I'm just aware of it, and I have the important takeaways from it. That's all that you need to know about. And you should look at the Oscars, for example. Their big award show. It's Hollywood. They're just talking to themselves in like a little vacuum. It's all they have left. You know, you tend to think, oh, they're running the world. No, they're really not. It's a small little industry award show, and they get together now, and they have for the past 10, 15 years, and they just complain about things. That's it. That's all it is. We'll have some clips for that. At the end of this, though, I discovered something very important last night. This was making the rounds. It was going viral last night. Why do movies stink now? It's because of the qualifications that the Oscars put on these producers of movies and content in order for them to be up for an award. It's unbelievable, and it explains a lot. We'll get to that. In real news, TSA agents still aren't getting paid, and they're trying to defund and are, right now, Department of Homeland Security in a very dangerous time for our country. You heard that right. And Virginia is unbelievable. Be very, very careful where you live, where you decide to live. Because Virginia literally is telling their residents, they're trying to pass a bill that won't allow residents, that will severely restrict gun laws, except for elected politicians. You talk about the rules are for thee and not me. We'll get to all that stuff coming up. Thanks for hanging out with me. Appreciate you. Wicked Radio live stream, Monday through Friday, Eastern Time. X and YouTube and Facebook and the replay on all those networks and also the audio podcast as well, wherever you like to get those. Let's check in with the Oscars last night. I won't dwell on this. I promise you. I know you don't care about this, but you care about the takeaway. Let's check in. Have they gotten any better? Are they? Let's see.
No to war and free Palestine.
Okay, so they're not better. The same crap. But to be fair, Conan O'Brien, who was the host, he actually said that it's going to get political. They can't really stop it. But then he took a dig at everybody else.
I should warn you, tonight could get political, okay? And if that makes you uncomfortable, there's an alternate Oscars being hosted by Kid Rock. Yeah. It's at the Dave & Buster's down the street. A lot of tickets for that.
It's probably, I saw a lot of people online last night who were all upset by that. It's like, oh, that's so insulting. And it's not. So don't be insulted. Take that for what it is. It's a win. Here's the win. They still don't get that people want an alternative to what they push out there. An alternative to everything. The movies they push on you, the TV content, even a lot of stuff online, they still don't understand that. Or maybe they're threatened by it and they have to make jokes about it. You know, he was making a reference to the alternative halftime show, which got a lot of viewers, right? They're threatened by that. How dare they? How dare somebody else not go along with the stuff we push out there? How dare that the American people speak up and they determine what we're Hollywood. We'll determine what people want to see. No, it's not like that anymore. So they make their little veiled attempts. Again, what's the takeaway? It's sad. You should feel sorry for the Oscars. It's like this little coffee clutch of soccer moms that just get together and complain about things. That's how you have to look at Hollywood these days, because that's all it is. Like, case in point, this guy.
As you know, there are some countries whose leaders don't support free speech. I'm not at liberty to say which. Let's just leave it at North Korea and CBS. Fortunately,
now you can look at that as if Jimmy Kimmel is making a strong statement, or he's taking a shot at everybody else. But just think about it for a second. Remember that whole theme about sad? Hollywood is just sad now, and the Oscars are sad. An example of that. Look at Jimmy Kimmel complaining about not having free speech as he's saying it on a stage televised to the world. You can either take this as they're just dumb, they don't realize that. I don't think he's dumb. I think he just realizes that we're on to the game now. I think that's what it is. Sad. Don't be upset about the Oscars. And you're thinking, well, I don't watch the Oscars. No. And I heard it said last night, somebody posted this and it went huge. It got a lot of likes. And this wasn't me writing this, but I thought it was amazing. It said, no heterosexual conservative man is watching the Oscars anyway. And I think that's actually true. And I'm not telling you that I watch the Oscars. I just have a takeaway for it to keep an eye on this kind of stuff. Like I said, so you don't have to. But it's interesting. I don't know what kind of numbers it's going to do. ABC is going to come out and say that because they work in the streaming numbers now too, and they'll say it was bigger than last year or it was bigger. But think about the impact. Oscar, think about for a second when maybe you actually were interested in the Oscars years ago. 90s even, but the 80s for sure. Late 70s, they were huge with all those classic Hollywood stars, right? When it wasn't as woke and they weren't all complaining about politics all the time. And it did back in the Vietnam days, but it wasn't like this. Think about that. It made a cultural impact and it was big and people were talking about it. Not now. Don't think that they're this big, powerful force anymore because they're not. Remember what the Oscars are. It's an inside industry award. They happen to televise because there's a lot of Hollywood celebrities there. That's all it is. But again, something amazing came out of this last night. I got for you in a couple of minutes. The rules they apply on anybody that enters anything for an Oscar. Because anybody that makes any kind of film, they want that award. They still want it, right? So they can put it on their resume. They put it on their mantle in their office. It gets them more work. What you have to do to qualify to be Oscar even nominated these days is unbelievable. And it explains why, for the most part, movies stink these days and they don't come up with anything new. All right, let's move on from that. What's going on? TSA, are they getting paid, TSA agents? Do we have DHS now in a dangerous time when we're, at war with Iran? Is that happening? No, still no. Here's something interesting, though. The Sunday talk shows, and this was CBS's Face the Nation, Deface the Nation, I think Rush used to call it. They're getting grilled, Democrats are, and their whole talking point on this. And that's interesting. They know how unpopular this is to defund, to not pay TSA agents, for example, as part of DHS.
On the facts, the Senate failed to advance that Homeland Security funding for the fourth time yesterday. We have airline CEOs faulting Congress for not paying TSA agents. I've got video of TSA workers on food lines because they just missed their second paycheck, half paycheck last time, full paycheck this Friday. Why can't your leaders break this deadlock?
Margaret, I think we should. And what we have offered is let's pay TSA, let's pay FEMA, let's pay the National Guard, the Coast Guard, let's pay CISA. I'd even say let's pay Customs and Border Patrol. If we can't agree on ICE reforms, let's pay everybody else.
Oh, there it is. ICE reforms. ICE. Those bad guys. That's what they're so afraid of. He just admitted it right there. That's what it is. All of this, they're willing to not have TSA agents paid right now, to defund Department of Homeland Security, for God's sakes, because they're so threatened by deportations. It just said it right there. That's what all of this is. They're willing to have the people in charge of keeping you, me, and our families safe, unpaid, because they're so threatened by deportations. Why? Because they need them. Because they need illegals to vote in elections. Otherwise, the Democrats have no platforms on which they can win. It's all right there. And it's all obvious, and they're all admitting it now. They're willing to do that. And now they're starting to realize and feel the heat how unpopular this is with even independents and liberals. That this whole concept is just absolutely insane. This is going to backfire so badly for them. During a time in which the larger issue is what we have going on with Iran right now, where we're still engaging in warfare with them. We just are. It's a matter of fact. It's going very well, despite what they're trying to tell you. Iran has nothing left. It doesn't mean there aren't sleeper cells in this country right now willing to, impose ill will upon our country and our people. Right now. But you've got a party that is willing to defund the people, willing to keep us safe, who are trying to keep us safe because they're so afraid of deportations. What does that tell you? What does that tell you where their priorities are? And those TSA agents, man, I know a lot of them have quit. Who can blame them? They got to get some side work. Getting unpaid doing that job. I know you may not be happy with TSA agents. I run into some bad ones too. But for the most part, like any industry, they're great people and they're doing a job. Imagine doing that job in an airport, trying to tell these idiots how to move their suitcase through the security line. Imagine doing that and not getting paid for it. I cannot imagine. And I don't blame any one of them for walking off that job for right now, because they have to make money somehow. You got these politicians making sure that they're not getting their paychecks because they hate the idea of deportations, because they hate it. They're telling you exactly what the game is. So we'll see. We'll see if they wake up, but they're starting to feel the heat now, I'll tell you that much. This is something I wanted to bring to you today. I wrote this down because it hasn't passed yet, but it's about to. This is why it's so important, and this should be your takeaway. It's very, very important, more important than ever, to decide where you live. Well, of course I decide where I live. Do you? Or are you just kind of stuck there? Look at, I always say this, we don't have time to look at local elections. We don't have time to look at state elections. We don't have time to look at midterms all the time. We're all working. We're all trying to get things done. We have businesses. We have families. We have kids. We have other interests. I get it, but we have to. Otherwise, you're what? Virginia. Now, there's a lot of great people in the state of Virginia. I know some who live there, actually. But Virginia, Northern Virginia, in fact, pretty much runs how that state goes, because there's a bunch of career bureaucrats that work in Washington, D.C. They want to hold on to their jobs, and they live in Northern Virginia. And what do? They want to vote in Democrats because they want to keep their jobs and pensions. Just a matter of fact. That's how it's always gone. But it's never been this bad. The Virginia State's legislature is pushing through a bill that would severely restrict Second Amendment rights. That's not that big of a surprise. This might surprise you, though. Now, here's the debate just this past weekend in the Virginia House about this particular bill. Now, what's so controversial about it? Well, they want to restrict people of Virginia, their gun rights. But there's an exemption clause in there. There's an exemption clause for politicians, elected officials in Virginia. They can have them. This is a little boring, but this guy debates this on the stage.
Madam President, I wish the senator from Eastern Fairfax could hear himself. Because we think this job has gotten dangerous in the last couple of years. Well, how many Virginians out there believe that they're in a situation where they need to protect themselves? But yet we don't listen to them. Well, not me, but this body's not going to listen to them because they think they need to have this protection. We're going to.
What's he talking about? If you're a visual podcast follower, you saw that there was a highlighted part of this particular bill. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but there's a highlighted part of it that's got everybody upset. And it's a good thing they found this and somebody read through it to find it, because it's pretty unbelievable. You want to talk about a classic example of the rules are for thee and not me? Well, here you go. The provisions of this section, blah, 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 blah. This is about restricting gun rights. The provisions of this section shall not apply to any member of the General Assembly who leaves a handgun in an unattended motor vehicle. So what they're saying is part of the bill is all kinds of details restricting your rights, including nobody can leave a handgun in a vehicle, blah, 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 right? Except if you're an elected official in Virginia. What? Blah, blah, blah. When such vehicle is parked in any parking structure reserved for members of the General Assembly. General Assembly meaning state politicians for Virginia. Here's the long and short of it. They want to, this bill, overall, with all its sections, would severely limit the Second Amendment rights of Virginia citizens, with an exception for politicians, elected officials in Virginia. If they hadn't paid attention to this would have been slipped in and they could do whatever they want. This is just the fact that this was written in. Somebody went through this, they went through legal, they wrote it, they put it in the bill, it got this far, is unbelievable because of the mindset and the attitude of what it is. Whoever came up with this, whatever politician came up with this or group of politicians in the state of Virginia said, they're saying out loud, we're better than the citizenry. We're better than regular normal people. We're going to restrict their gun rights, but we're not going to restrict ours. Again, what's the takeaway? Be very careful where you choose to live and pay attention to, I know it's not the most exciting thing, but pay attention to state elections, county elections, city elections, town elections, hell, even your HOA. I know you don't want to, and I know it's not fun, but you have to wake up. Otherwise, you're a victim to this kind of stuff. Be very careful where you live. And I hope you wake up, Virginia. I really do. I don't, man. Is that ridiculous? All right. I'm not going to dwell on the Oscars again. I promised you there was one amazing takeaway from this, and we've all asked the question. Even last night, when my wife was watching this last night downstairs, she loves the Oscars, loved watching it. She thinks it's ridiculous too, believe me, but loves watching it because, I don't know, It's like her Super Bowl, she calls it, right? So I'll keep an eye on that, on this and that. I'll read what's going on. I'll get the comments. I didn't watch the whole thing. But this, during the show, during the middle of the show, went viral last night, mostly on X, but it made it to Instagram as well, probably on TikTok too. Somebody dug up the qualification rules for any feature film or documentary or short or anything to be nominated for an Oscar. And let's face it, they all want to win the award, right? It's their industry, it's their internal industry award. It's a big deal for them that work in that industry. This may answer the question why a lot of movies just stink right now. They're just absolutely awful. Here's the part to be qualified, to be considered for an Oscar. Here's one section of it this is item A2, general ensemble cast. This is real. It's been verified. It is true. From the Oscar, from the Academy. At least 30% of all actors not submitted for Oscar consultation are from at least two underrepresented groups, which may include women, racial or ethnic group, LGBTQ+, of course, people with cognitive or physical disabilities, or are deaf and hard of hearing. So these are cast members, not the people who would get an Oscar, but for anything nominated for an Oscar. At least 30% of all the actors have to fit into all of those categories. Women, racial ethnic group, LGBTQ+, people with cognitive or physical disabilities, or are deaf or hard of hearing. Now, that's not to say it wouldn't be great to have these people have jobs in any capacity. That would be awesome. But a requirement that 30% of them have to have that? How about the main storyline or subject matter? This is item A3 in the qualification to win an Oscar. You ready? The main storylines, themes, narrative of the film should be centered on an underrepresented groups. What? Item A3. The main storylines, theme, or narrative of the film is centered on an underrepresented group. Women, racial or ethnic group, LGBTQ+, people with cognitive physical disabilities, or are deaf or hard of hearing. Why does that matter, Bill? Those people should be represented. Here's why. Think of how many classic movies, all of your favorites, would never win an Oscar now under these new rules. I don't know how new, but they're new compared to like the classic days when people were actually interested in the Oscars. You know what movies couldn't be made now? The Godfather, 1 or 2, wouldn't be able to be made. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, maybe. You know, think of the classics. Think of the classics way back in the day. The Deer Hunter, couldn't make that. None of them. Because you would have, let's say you wanted to make a movie, and it would be directed by Spielberg, one of the biggest names in Hollywood, right? And you say, we're going to make a period piece. Great. It's going to be about 1850-something, Western culture life about a bunch of people who went in covered wagons. They went out west. Great. Are you going to have a bunch of LGBTQ players in it? No, we weren't really planning on that. Okay, well, you're going to have to. Is it majority women? No, it's a bunch of dudes who are going out to the west to find gold. Oh, okay. Do you have any deaf actors? No, they can all hear. Well, sorry, you'll never be considered for an Oscar. Think of how limiting this is for everything. When there are all these new movies, this answers the question why most of the mainstream big Oscar-nominated movies now absolutely stink because of these qualifications and these rules they put on them. Think of all the classic movies. Come up with your own list of all the classic movies, some of your favorite movies of all time, and I would bet you dollars to donuts, not one of them would be able to win an Oscar these days because of those rules. I was thinking of Godfather example, right? Godfather 1 and 2. Some of the classic, many people, including mine, favorite movies of all time wouldn't win an Oscar these days. Why? No LGBTQ plus or deaf people or racial. It was about an Italian immigrant family that worked its way up through a mob family. But because you didn't have LGBTQ plus, it never would have won an Oscar. There you go. That explains everything. Anyway, don't be upset about the Oscars or Hollywood in general. It's sad. They know that they're falling apart, and they know that they're in a vacuum these days, and they're in an echo chamber. And also with the Virginia story, be careful where you live. Pay attention to it. All right, thanks for finding me. I'm out of material, and you got to get on with your Monday. Make it a wicked awesome Monday. Tomorrow's St. Patty's Day. Hope you're pre-gaming today. We got some stuff to talk about with that. In the meantime, thanks for finding the audio podcast where this thing mainly lives. Wherever you like to get your podcast, just subscribe, download, like, share, all that stuff. It's posted right after we get off the live stream. And the replay of the live stream on X and YouTube and Facebook. Most importantly, make it a wicked awesome Monday. I'll talk to you tomorrow.